So we're going to talk stories, which is something that I know fairly well. As Maria said, I'm a writer, a full-time writer now. I've written my entire life, always as a hobby, never as a career until the last couple of years. But when I started writing about jewelry, I felt that the industry was inundated at the time with, jewelry journalists. There were plenty of jewelry journalists. There were plenty of jewelry publications. And they're all great, JCK and National Jeweler and In-Store. These are wonderful publications. And I had to find my own path, and I had to figure out a way to separate myself. And so one of the first stories that I wrote when I launched Adore Mentality, which was over 4 years ago, was about how I started in the jewelry industry. And I'm just going to give you a few examples of what I do when it comes to storytelling and why that's really turned into a successful career for me, and then kind of relay that into sales and what we can do to help you, make sales through storytelling. So I actually wrote this story, and it was called The Bucket of Steam. I worked in Philadelphia on Jewelers Row for a store called Steven Singer, and I was young at the time. I was in my early 20s, and I was hired as a runner. And if you don't work in the jewelry district in New York or in Philly, you may not know what a runner is. A runner is really the gopher. I was the person who took the waxes from the carver to the caster, and they casted it and picked it up from the caster and took it to the polisher for them to clean the castings. And I really learned the in and outs of the industry those first 3 years of being a runner. But my first week on the job, my manager at the time, we had a steamer in the back of the store, and they told me that the steamer was out of steam, and they handed me a bucket and wanted me to run across the street to the Neff building and to ask the polisher there if he would fill up the bucket with steam for me to come back and put the steamer on, to actually pour the steam into the steamer. So they hazed me. And I think maybe realizing that, I was kind of this young, attractive girl at the time, that I wasn't going to get it. I think they did that to a lot of runners when they first started out. But I told this story, and it wasn't really a story about product, and it wasn't a story about a particular brand, and it wasn't a story about a trend, which I think at the time, largely that's what we were reading mostly about, was what trends were in, and what brands were hot or were going to be hot, and what we saw at trade shows. There really wasn't a lot of storytelling happening 4 years ago that was getting down and dirty into what actually happens in jewelry stores or on the road. And so that was one of my first posts, maybe in the first 3 posts that I ever wrote for Adore Mentality, and it exploded. And it had gotten, I remember at the time, hundreds of reads the first week, and I was mind blown, because prior to that, I'd write for Blogger, I'd write sort of a personal blog, and I was getting maybe 50, 100 hits if I was lucky. But this one was like 600, 700 reads. And then it started getting shared. And then people started to reach out to me. Other writers started to reach out to me, asking if they could interview me because they wanted to share that tale and share that story. And so I immediately realized, oh, this is what's been missing. And this is the thing that potentially could separate me. And then Vegas rolled around. And I don't know if you guys have ever read any of my Tales from the Strip series, but I started those either in 2014, I think it was 2014 or 2015. I started doing those, and I did them for 2 years, and they're segments. And it's just a series that talks about what exactly happens in Vegas. Not the dangerous stuff that could get anybody divorced, but what kind of goes down behind the scenes. And they were some of my most read pieces. And, In-Store at the time posted about the pieces, just going crazy. Like, this is so funny and so fun and so different and refreshing. And so that's sort of how I made my mark in this industry. And little by little, over the last 4 years, I realized that the world, especially the younger generations, are really feeding off of storytelling. And it means much more to consumers at this point. So I'm going to talk about something that happened this week, just to bring it to now the current time. I write for a couple of different publications, In Store being one. I also write for a watch blog called Watchinista. They're an online publication. And I pitch my editor-in-chief. His name is Josh, and he's awesome. I pitch him, monthly, I pitch him some stories. And I pitched him this story. I wanted to do an interview with a watchmaker by the name of Fiona Kruger. And you may have read about Fiona. There have been a couple of different articles written about her. National Jeweler did a great piece. Brecken wrote a great piece on Fiona. If you read Hodinkee, they've done several pieces on Fiona's work. What separates Fiona is she is a woman watchmaker, which is a rarity. She's in her early 30s, which is also a rarity. And she's Scottish. She's from Scotland. So she really had sort of three strikes against her coming into the watch industry, and which makes for a really interesting tale and a really interesting story. But Fiona had been written about. I just mentioned two publications, and they're not nearly the only two who have written about Fiona Kruger. I wanted to bring something different to the Watchinista aspect of an interview with Fiona. And so I pitched this idea to Josh and said, I want to write an interview on Fiona. And he said, yeah, okay, that sounds cool. I went, yeah, but I want to do it after we've been capsized in a boat, shipwrecked, and stranded on a deserted island. And it was silence on the other end of the phone. And he kind of gave me like an, okay, where's this going? And I said, yeah, I want to do that. And then I want us to be rescued by the ghost of David Bowie. And I think Josh really didn't know what to say. He kind of went, I don't even know, I have no idea where this could possibly go, but I'm so intrigued with it. Yeah, great, let's do it. And so I did. And it posted on Friday on Watchinista's blog. And I shared it on social, like I do, because that's why you tell stories in this generation and with this generation, is because you want to be able to share things. And so I shared it on Facebook and I shared it on LinkedIn. And the article's been read over 4,000 times. It's been read on LinkedIn alone nearly 1,458 times as of 10 o'clock this morning. So to give you a bit of a better idea of why I'm a big advocate for storytelling, that was a 3,000 word article. And I feel like I constantly hear that, this generation has a very small attention span. Some of you may have already turned me off at this point, but 3,000 words, the article took me a lot of time to write, and it would take a fair amount of time, a good 10 minutes for somebody to read it. But it had been read thousands upon thousands of times. And, getting into the watch journalist aspect of our industry, not just writing, but then writing about watches, I was a little fearful, again, of finding something that would separate me. And I had people tell me at the very beginning, I don't know how Patek is gonna take you. I don't know how Rolex is gonna take you. You're doing something that's kind of off the wall and a bit crazy. But the reality is, it's also the thing that's getting me noticed. So in this day and age, and in trying to reach, and I'm going to continue to keep talking about millennials, but I'm also going to talk about Gen Z, which is the generation after millennials, because they are the influencer generation. And they were born into social media, and they were born with this share / like / comments mentality. And I think that's why storytelling is so important to this generation and the next generation coming up. You can have an incredible business model. You can be in a tremendous location if you're a retailer. You can have a fantastic staff. You can have the right product, okay? And you can charge a fair price. That's no longer enough. And if you're investing in a brand, if you're a store that's carrying brands, you guys are members of the AGS, a lot of you, I think not all members of the AGS are on this webinar, but if you are an AGS member, you understand that there are also registered suppliers. And we have people in our ranks like Erica Courtney and like Lika Behar, Paula Crevichet, who have unbelievable stories to tell. Erica Courtney, if you carry Erica Courtney, I'm sure you know her story. This story is mind-blowing. And if you have her coming in, whether you carry her product regularly or you have her coming in for a trunk show, Erica's story should be told. It should be known by you if you're the owner, if you're the store manager, if you're the buyer, but every member of your staff, because her story it's unlike anybody else's. You have Lika. Lika was, she designed children's clothing before getting into selling jewelry or designing jewelry. And she has an amazing story, an incredible story. And it's a story that if you carry her products and carry her brand, you should know and your staff should know. I'll give you another example of a company a store that I visited that was actually a lifestyle store. They carry very, very high-end clothing and shoes, Louboutin shoes, but then they also carry very, very high-end jewelry like Irene Neuwirth, Sevan Chaki. I'm not going to tell you where the store is, excuse me, because I would give it away and I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I will share with you my experience there. I walked into the store. Nobody knew who I was because I'm a jewelry journalist, so my face isn't completely out there, especially in a lifestyle type store. And I noticed that they had Sevan's designs, and Sevan's pieces are some of the most extraordinary pieces of jewelry you will ever see in your life. There is no one like him. And I saw them in the case, and I asked the young man, salesman, if I could see one of the rings first. And this was a ring that I had seen online, that I had seen pictures of. It was unbelievably well made, and it actually was a scene. It was Istanbul, and its buildings were carved into this, I believe, rock crystal outside. It was extraordinary. The salesman took it out of the case, and he handed it to me. Sevan is award-winning. He lives in Istanbul. He has such an incredible story. His work is just so above and beyond. And the salesperson handed it to me. I took it. He then opens up a book and told me the price. He told me the price. He told me nothing about Sevan's work. He told me nothing about the gemstones. He told me nothing about what the ring was, what it represented, what Istanbul represented, what this designer, how he came to be. He told me nothing. He opened up the book and proceeded to tell me that this ring cost $30,000. The romance was gone at that point. And I handed it back to him, and I asked to see a second ring. Almost like giving him a second shot. Same thing. This one had doves. This ring was these flying doves in this stone that was in the center. Opens it up, hands it to me. Oh, that costs $18,000. Doesn't tell me anything about the ring. As a writer, I was offended almost. I was appalled that all I was to this salesman was a dollar sign. And I'm not even a millennial. I'm a Gen Xer, and I was so completely turned off. Had I just been a consumer off the street, somebody who had, $30,000 to spend on a ring, I would never have purchased it. But it gets better. I hand him the second ring back, and I say, that piece is incredible. And the salesperson says, yes, her designs are amazing. And I almost dropped dead. Her designs are amazing. I couldn't help myself. I said, Sevan's a man. If you're going to be selling a $30,000 ring, the least you could do is figure out the artist's gender. It was offensive to me. And taking that and going beyond even just romancing me and telling the story, like that to me was such a learning opportunity for this person, if they stopped for a split second and thought, oh my God, I totally screwed up that sale, because this person actually cares about what she's spending $18,000 on or $30,000 on. And, I think it's really important to train your staff, if you're a retailer, on learning about these brands. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a person like Savon, but just a brand. Like if it's Zyto, if it's not one single, designer's name behind it, but if it's, Benchmark, learn Benchmark's story. So what? It's a wedding band. Learn their story. What's unique about Benchmark? Or, any of the wedding band companies. What makes them unique? How long have they been around? And so I really was looking forward to using that as an example for this webinar, because first of all, I had to express myself to somebody, because I've been holding that in and was so terribly offended about that. But yeah, so I think also, if you're a designer, and if you're a designer and you're watching this, whether you are an AGS designer, AGS registered supplier or not, it's also your duty to make sure that your story is being told to your people who are selling it at your stores. Again, maybe you just make diamond wedding bands. Maybe that's just something that you do. But what's unique? How are you a family business? How long have you been in business? What's unique about the building that your store is in, that your shop is in? What's unique about your shop itself? Are you using equipment that's specialty equipment? You've got to be able to find a story in everything you do. And if you can't find it, and whether that is your retail store or your brand, or if you're a writer, if you're a journalist, if you can't find your own story, then hire a marketing company to help you find a story, because there is one there. And maybe you feel that you're just not creative enough, or your team isn't creative enough to bring that out. But it's there. I can find something in everyone. I always joke to my husband that I can find something attractive in everyone. It doesn't matter. It could be the most evil, horrible human being on the planet. I can find something attractive, because that's what I do, is I seek out what's interesting and attractive. I don't mean looks wise, but an attractive quality. What's good, what's interesting, what can I talk about, what would interest, my readers. It's a skill, and I can do that. And there are people out there, and largely marketing people, who have that skill, and they can do that for you too. I want to give a couple of shout outs to some of my AGS friends here. Going back to the Erica Courtney thing, I remember visiting Underwoods in Jacksonville a couple years back when I was still doing sales, and I talked to Denise Richards, and she said to me she had an Erica Courtney trunk show coming up, and she showed me the invitation, and it was so cool and creative and funky, and it really told Erica's story. And I think Denise is a great person. You can pick her brain and find out some of the things that she does and does well in that, capability of telling stories. I think she does it very well. John Carter, his store's story, which I know more about now than I used to, is really an incredible story. And on top of the fact that his store had gone through 3 owners, John also does fun, funky, cool things that people want to be a part of and that they want to share. Blingfest, hello, are you kidding? Blingfest and the commercials, and they're kind of hokey and they're tongue-in-cheek, but it's Blingfest, and I want to share. When I see that pop up on my Facebook page, I want to share that John's having Blingfest. I don't know if any of my people would be buying from John, but it's so fun, and it's so funny, and just kind of cheeky, and I really appreciate that. I think as a writer, things that are fun and that captivate consumers and that captivate audiences, and for me, that captivate readers. I respect brands and stores who are able to sort of get in touch with their people because of that. I want to read a quote, and I'm going to look down. I'm sorry, I've got my notes here, so if you see me looking down, that's what that is. I want to read a quote. There was an article on Forbes this year about Nielsen's, it was called the Millennials and Millennials Report. And it states talking about millennials clearly, this generation values being acknowledged as individuals, being presented with options, and feeling connected. They're receptive to brand storytelling over straightforward ads, exhibiting early adoption tendencies and developing a loyalty to brands they can trust. Millennials don't care if content is branded. They care if it speaks to them. These are your customers right now. You're likely a millennial. Maybe you're married. Maybe you have kids. Maybe you just started having babies. Maybe you just got married. Maybe you're planning on getting married. You know, 5 years ago, everybody was going crazy about how to market to millennials. It's really easy, okay? They may not care about luxury, or you, if I'm speaking to millennials, you may not care about luxury as much. Maybe you do because you're in the jewelry industry, but maybe your friends don't. But you care about substance, and you care about sustainability, and you care about, sharing, again, because you're the social media generation, and the generation after you is as well. So you care about sharing, and you're happy to share, and you're happy to write reviews and share your thoughts on an experience. That all comes back to the story. If you're a millennial and you're in the jewelry industry and you're trying to sell because you're in a store, or you're trying to sell to a store, storytelling is important. It's not going to go anywhere. It's here to stay. Influence is important. Setting yourself apart is important. Like I said, product isn't enough anymore. Price isn't enough. Don't knock your heads into the wall because you think, I don't understand. We have an educated staff. We have nothing but, GIA and AGS graduates who are here. We have award-winning designers on staff. Our store looks great. We've got the right product. It's not enough now. It's not enough. Who are you reaching with the story that you're telling? So I think that's pretty much about 25 minutes of talk right there. And I'm open for any questions that anybody might have. Nobody? Bueller? I don't sing, or else I would sing, if you guys would like me to. Here we go. Oh, Josh. Okay. How can retailers tell their story when many brands restrict what can be said and shown? That's actually a really valid point. So Josh has asked how retailers can tell their story when there are brands who restrict what can be said or shown. I'm not going to mention names. I think if you're a retailer and you're watching right now, you know who you can play with and who you can't. Telling it online is probably, Josh, and I'm speaking to you here. Telling it online is going to be tough, because you're right. You can't do an Instagram post necessarily without saying very specific things about said brand, and whether that's a watch brand or a jewelry brand. And there are some of those brands out there that just say, it has to say this, you have to use these hashtags, you've got no other option at that point. But that doesn't mean that you have to stop at social media. You can still tell the brand's story in your own words and in your own way in the store, and how you train your staff about it, and do something that sets you apart maybe from the next quote unquote high-priced watch retailer that may carry the same watch brand. And maybe it comes down to a newsletter. If you guys have a newsletter, and what's necessarily said in the newsletter, or maybe it comes down to a type of event where it's a watch and scotch type event where you can bring the customers in. Yeah, okay, great. Use the guidelines that the brand has given you to use when it's in writing, but bring them in and actually, then you can be a bit more human with it and you can talk a little bit differently about it. But I think that's a valid point. It definitely is tougher. And I wish more of the bigger brands would put fewer restrictions on retailers for doing that. Thank you, Meredith, for saying what you said. So, Angela, it seems like there are a lot of stories, your own, your stores, your designers. Do you have a rough outline to go about bringing your story out? Yeah, I mean, if you're a store or you're a designer, get a blog. Have a blog. You should have a blog. Have a blog. That is the greatest way to tell your story. It brings an uptick of visits to your websites. Have events, I think, is another great way. Bring people in. Oh, you know what? Okay, so Alp Sagnick is one of my favorite designers. If you guys were at the WJA Awards for Excellence, I wore this crazy piece that he made for me for my nomination. He right now he's traveling the country, and he's pretty much a one-guy show, right? Here's this guy who is an incredible designer who is going door to door, almost like old school, like, vacuum cleaner salesman. He's setting up these trunk events himself with designers who don't stock his merchandise. And it's called The Word. Literally, it's called The Word. It's about this one ring, and the concept behind this ring is so moving and touching, it brought me to tears. And that is not a lie. It is such an incredible story. And he not only comes in and does these trunk shows with these people, but it isn't just like, hey, I'm a designer, I'm going to bring in a bunch of stuff. Man, he like stops it dead. He gathers everybody around like it's a fireside tale, and he tells this story. And he is how he looks and how he acts. He was actually on Humans of New York. They had his story on Humans of New York last episode, their new Facebook episodes. He's such an incredible storyteller, and to watch him is mesmerizing. And like, he pulls these people in and then he tells them this story, and it's fascinating. And it's just, totally. You can figure out a way of doing it, whether it's through a newsletter, through a blog, through events that you have with designers that you bring in, or through events, just, in-store events. That if you want to have a watch event, or if you want to do a wedding band event, make it interesting, make it fun. Bring in some designer that has just some crazy, different and unique, tale to tell. I have another one. William Frost. Okay, so as a vendor, how can I get my stores involved? I'd love to tell my company story, but so few people want to listen at the retail level. I was in retail for 10 years and lived by the stories I told about the companies I sold. I can't understand why helping others do this is really look, I come 22 years, like Maria said. I have done it all. I was a manufacturer. I was a bench worker. I carved waxes. I was in road sales. I was on the road, and I had to tell stories of the brands that I carried, but I was also a buyer for a retail store. And so I had to listen to those stories. And, I ran an internet retail company for 9 years, and I had to portray a story without having people in front of me. I had to be able to tell the story in writing as well as on the phone, so that, that you have to kind of figure out a way to do it. William, I think for you, yes, you're right. Unfortunately, sometimes retailers can be a bit like, we don't have time to have you come in to do a training. Trainings are incredibly important. And I know that if you're employing somebody who's like a part-time worker who's maybe 19 and she's, doing it for college credits, it's tough to get that person impassioned. But we have to try. And I think a lot of road reps or brands or designers have almost given up on trying to train the stores, because the stores are just like, oh, we're busy, whatever. Dude, that's not how you make sales. I mean, if you're in sales, you wouldn't give up on your customer. You'd send them emails over and over until you were blue in the face, until they said to you, stop. You would continue to keep at it. That's what a good salesperson does, because you don't know, it might take that 10th try. So if we can partner more, if the retailer and the designer or the brand can partner more and go, hey, we just want to come in, we just want to do a training, let's do a breakfast training, we're going to treat, we'll bring in some orange juice and some donuts, or I think there's an opportunity there. It seems old school, but I think it's almost so old that it's refreshing to sort of bring that back, because that's where the story starts. It's when the brand and the designer is on the exact same wavelength as the retailer. I hope that was helpful. Do I have a recommendation or a book or blog or video that helps one formulate the basics of storytelling? I don't, but read my stuff because it's funny. I don't. I actually do. I don't have a book, but I'm sure there are plenty out there, and I can probably do some research for you. And Angela, we're friends on Facebook, and I'm happy to maybe snoop around a little bit and send you a quick message and say, like, hey, this might potentially work. So, okay. So what do we have here? Is it more valuable to present myself as an individual professional through a blog, social media, or to market our store name? Mary, let's see. Well, I don't know. Are you the owner? Can you? I don't know. I mean, if you're the owner of the store, I think it's incredibly important to market it as your store, but you're also going to work in your personal tales. When I see an Instagram page and all it is jewelry, I'm bored to tears. I don't. Tell me about this product. If you're a jewelry store and all you're doing is posting ring, 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 necklace, earrings, ring, necklace, blah. No, tell me what you've done. Are you doing charity work for your local SPCA? Show me dogs. I don't know, throw something else. Show me your baby. Show me a super cute picture of a customer's baby, or, a picture of a bride and groom, or some event that you sponsored that's like a local sporting event. Mix it in. And I don't want to make this a social media discussion necessarily, but part of storytelling is social media because it's direct storytelling. So I think, definitely represent your store, but you can also, especially if you're the store owner, you can add a bit of you into the store. And not only you, every employee you have. Maybe you have a young person who is a high schooler who comes in and helps on the weekends. Maybe she was prom queen. I don't know. Add her in. You can make it a bit more personalized. That's one of the greatest aspects of the millennial generation, is that they care. It's weird. It's like they care about, they'll ask questions about your life and, how things are. And they care about themselves because they also want questions asked about themselves, but they care about you, and they want to learn from what you're telling them, and they want to share those experiences because it is just about sharing at this point. So yeah, and incorporate it, make it personal, always make it personal. I love to tell stories on either the publications that I write or on my blogs that sort of incorporate my personal issues, or I have a lot of issues, my personal story in this jewelry industry, and some of those are issues. I mean, what do you say? Not every story is going to be positive. Some of them are going to be sad or negative, but I think putting myself out there and letting the world see exactly who I am has really been the thing that's set me apart a little bit in the writing world. Okay, I'm bored. Vicente. Hi, Vicente. I'm bored of seeing yet another photo of a jewelry ring selfie on Instagram. I mean, aren't our customers? Do you have any additional examples of the ways brands are telling stories online? Video is fun, but it's time consuming. Video is fun, but it doesn't have to be time consuming because you have Instagram stories. And so you only have a limited amount of time. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, people still want to see rings on fingers. But maybe they want to see the story leading up to the ring that's on the finger. For me, I just got back from Vincenzo Oro, and it was extraordinary. So everybody read my in-store article that I wrote on it today, because that's a fun story article. So go to in-store, read the Vincenzo Oro story. It's again, it sort of sets it up. I talk about Madonna and the Papa Don't Preach video. I try to throw in things that are a little bit different. But what I did, and I was covering Vincenzo Oro both for my blog as well as for in-store, I tried to sort of like, let's take a look at the haul, or let's post about, these hot Italian guys in their suits, or, cool, funky shoes, but then also throwing in the ring. So I think, yeah, it can get monotonous when it is just, like I mentioned earlier, just jewelry after boring post, you know, the constant swipe left, swipe right, you know, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, great, we love it, we love jewelry, and this is all really beautiful, but incorporating a piece of ourselves, incorporating a piece of our environments, that tells the whole story. Where are you when you have this ring and when the picture of this ring was taken? I think that's, you know, you can sort of preface it and then also do like a little aftermath to the piece if you do that. Okay, how do you write and tell your story in a way that is authentic and real, but also professional? I'm not professional. I'm a jewelry designer born and raised in New York, so I have a great sense of humor and swear quite a bit in regular conversation. Whenever I need to write on my blog or in I love this woman, or in social media posts, I feel like I lose my voice and write in a boring professional way. It doesn't feel authentic. Okay, all right, and HES, don't kill me for saying this. I'm not gonna curse. Kelly, you don't have to be, it's okay to use a swear word every once in a while. If you're a designer and this is part of who you are, that's okay. I do occasionally, you know, drop a curse word or two in my blog posts. You know, I try to refrain. I'm not vulgar about it, but, you know, I might say a couple of 4-letter words that don't begin with F. Again, millennials respond to realness. They care about that. I think that's why little by little television shows started playing a little bit with their language, because they just finally realized, no, this is how society speaks. You know, it doesn't have to be vulgar, but that's okay. If you need to make a point by calling something bull crap, call it bull crap. That's real, man. That's gonna get you a response. You know, I think we're so focused on, we are afraid of offending people sometimes that we will lose ourselves in that. So I'm actually just not afraid to offend anybody anymore. And I think, again, I think that's one of the things that separated me, and, you know, sort of just put me in a slightly different realm than some of the writers out there, was just, people were looking at me going like, oh, Joel, like, you know, that was really daring. She's talking about Vegas, but she's talking about, like, you know, being at a strip club in Vegas, you know. So it was like, no, dude, but this is what happens. Everybody's thinking it, so it's okay. You can say it. Now, again, I didn't work for a publication at the time, so I didn't have a boss to answer to. If I'm JCK, I may not be able to do that necessarily, you know, or if I work for, you know, a major corporate, if I work for Neiman Marcus, I'm probably not going to be able to do that. But if you work for yourself and you're a designer and you're, you know, this is your gig, you're writing your own blog, yeah, man, do it. Totally. Like, you know, say SH, you know, whatskis. It's okay. You can do that. Nobody's going to kill you over it. Okay, how real should the story be? Should I be self-editing so my story is romantic, or should I leave it nitty-gritty like life? Okay, this is a two-part answer because I'm a grammar nut. Leave it nitty gritty, but for the love of God, get a copy editor. Because one thing that will potentially turn someone off is if your grammar and your spelling is a mess. I will tell you that. I am going to say that, okay? Have a second set of eyes. You know, there are some sites out there that you can run through that will check your grammar. If you're writing a blog post if you're a retailer, you're writing a blog post. Heck, if you're just doing your social media posts, really, really part of your story, it's great, it's the story, but the story also needs to be said in a way that doesn't look like you're just, you know, a screw up. If you can't tell the difference between why are you R and why are you apostrophe RE, you should not be doing your posts, okay? You need to know just the most basic things. That's part of your story. People want to read it, they want to read the nitty gritty, they want to read the realness, but they also want to know, like, this person has just a basic grasp of the English language. That's cool. Any other questions? Welcome to my house, by the way. No pets, no kids. This is like nice. Any other questions, you guys? I think we got a few more minutes. If anybody has any. How are my eyebrows, by the way? Sarah likes my house. My clocks. I got the double clocks working. Yes, Angela, personality is key. And again, one of my favorite things to tell people and to say is, life is sales. Life is sales. Life is sales. I'm a writer, and people are like, oh, how do you like not being in sales? I'm like, dude, I still got to sell myself. I have to sell myself to editors. I have to sell myself to publications. I have to sell myself to brands, that hire me for content. I'm still selling. Your doctor has to sell himself to you. The dentist you choose, your teacher, your kid's teacher at school. I mean, they still need to sell themselves, because if they're not a good teacher and they haven't done a good sell, you're going to go to the principal and potentially get them in trouble. Life is about sales. So it's got to be fun and interesting and unique and real and share worthy. I think that's the key right now. What are you doing in your business? What are your employees doing? What are you doing with your brand that would make people want to share you? Does that make sense? Okay. In terms of tone, content, messaging, yes. I would highly recommend leaving it nitty gritty. Here's another thing, and this is social too, but this is also part of storytelling. Kate, this kind of has to do with what you're asking. There is a bigger response. It's sort of been proven when a brand posts pictures, or a jewelry store posts pictures, and it's of my nearly 45-year-old kind of somewhat wrinkly hands with a ring on, or the person who's the store owner who's maybe 60 with a ring on. That's a real image. When that post gets posted, you will largely find that there will be more likes on that real post taken by a real person with a real hand, as opposed to a product shot. A product shot tells me nothing. It tells me no story. So, Kate, you would ask about nitty gritty. That's kind of that. Yeah, let your fingers do the walking. Like, if you're going to post about something that you've tried on, and I'm always nervous because I have grays, and I'm like, oh, my earrings, I don't want to do an earring shot, and then I'm like, why don't I want to do an earring shot? These are my grays. I've earned every one of them. It's like my kids' names, my husband. Yeah, so yeah, leave it nitty gritty. It's okay. I think people absolutely respond more to realness, and whether that's in tone or in content, also in background. So, or in look, when it's too polished, it really will turn people off. It's not believable. It seems copy pasty at that point. Did that answer your question? This is not wine or scotch. This is so weird. I never do seminars or webinars without throwing wine at people. Okay. If there are no other questions, I think we're probably wrapping it up. You guys, Maria, AGS, are we good? Anybody else? I love you, Mark Nadasi. Adam, oh, thanks for saying something nice. Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome, guys. I hope this was fun. And maybe we'll do this again sometime. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.